What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. So everything's good now. We're all set. Evergrande made good on their next coupon payment. There's no defaults, and we're moving ahead, full steam ahead in all markets. There's no financial contagion issue now. Whew, thank goodness, right? Wrong. So the statement that came out today, what the heck does that mean? I know a lot of you have seen that this statement came out saying Evergrande made good on their payment, on their next payment that was due. Man, that's so far from the truth, it's not even funny. So let's dig into what I'm talking about, what's really going on, what are we still waiting on, and what's going to happen moving forward. Is real estate truly going to crash? Let's get into it. All right, do me a favor before we get started. Subscribe, like, hit the bell for notifications, keep track of the information that's coming out, especially right now. This is the rocky fourth quarter is coming, and we all got to hang tight, stay strong, pay attention, and let's learn a little bit more along the way. Being informed as much as possible is the key to any success, and this is a really, really important time to pay attention to things. So that being said, let's dig into this real quick and see what's really going on here. What was the statement that came out today about Evergrande? Did they actually make good on their next payment or not? What does that all mean? And what does it mean moving forward? So going through this whole debacle today, first of all, they basically came to a deal or resolution with the upholding bond situation and what they owe on interest. And the agreement was basically a discounted coupon payment. And I don't even think they made that yet. It doesn't sound like they've even written a check of any kind, okay? So keep this in mind. They didn't even make good on their interest-only payment on one of the bond loans. And there's two giant ones, like I talked about in my video the other day. They have over $300 billion in debt just on two different bond products, okay? That doesn't include all of the other draws they've pulled out against other banks for loans, including banks here in the United States. This is just specifically talking about the bond debt they have, and this is mostly local. So keep that in mind too. Problem number one is they didn't actually make the full interest payment. They worked through a negotiation for a discounted payment. What does that all mean? All right, so for one thing, the way the payment was structured suggests the amount paid will be a haircut, which rating agencies will dub a technical default. So in other words, they're technically in default. Keep that in mind. Nothing's been righted. No ship has been righted yet. As Li Kai, partner of bond fund Shengao Investment, explains, Chinese companies typically pay interest on local bonds through a clearinghouse. When they arrange to pay note holders directly, it's often because the companies can't meet their obligations on time. Usually it will involve an extension, payment in installment, or a reduction in coupon, Lee said. This is one of the ways to avoid defaults by de-stressed companies. We know they're de-stressed. Furthermore, while Evergrande's announcement fueled speculation that the developer struck a deal with local bondholders to postpone the payment without having to label the move a default, the reality is that even at this moment, the company is facing a default on offshore bonds, which have an $83.5 million interest payment due on September 23rd. That's tomorrow as of the time of this video, on the 8.25 bonds due 2022. Incidentally, these same bonds traded down 0.7 cents to 24.5 cents, according to Bloomberg information, suggesting that creditors still expect a full default. We're not out of the woods. We're not even close. Evergrande, however you want to pronounce it, it's not going to be Ever or Grand after this, might have arrived at some kind of standstill with onshore holders, which is people in China, said Daniel Fan, a credit analyst at Bloomberg. They might have asked them not to act, pending for negotiation for a rescheduling or something of that sort. But the biggest problem, as represented in the chart below, is that whether it's a local or foreign, the company has billions of debt payments due in coming months and years. Just in the next 3 months, the developer owes $669 million in interest through the end of this year. That's 3 months basically from now, including $83.5 million for the coupon payment due tomorrow on the dollar bond. There's a 30-day grace period before a missed payment on that note would become a default, according to the bond covenants. All right, so this is the interest payment breakdown for the rest of the year. Now, again, keep in mind, we're at the end of September 2021. We're talking basically about 3 more months. They have $669 million of coupon payments remaining this year. Those are interest-only payments on the $2 bonds we're talking about, okay? So black is monthly interest payments due on the dollar bonds, and then the pink is interest due on the local bonds. And you can see September, October, November, December. Here you go. Now, these are all the dates of the bonds themselves. You look at where we're at down here, the insurmountable debt that this company has is absolutely incredible. And again, I emphasize, we're talking about just the bond notes that we're talking about that are borrowing against, not the other loaned money, the other money drawn from banks, and that's including banks, again, here in the United States, on different types of sometimes interest-only payment or interest-only loans, but different types of debt they've accrued. And the whole business plan behind this company is literally a Ponzi scheme. They will go out and they will purchase overpriced land or premium on land. They will collect payment from the ultimate buyer, and then they will take that money that they've collected and they will go buy more land with it. And then they'll use that money to go pay back on some of their loaned amounts, some of their bond payments, and then never actually finish the project. It's a giant Ponzi scheme. And what everyone's missing with Evergrande is everybody's so worried about the financial situation as far as what they owe and if they're going to default, if they're going to go belly up. But no one's taking into account the millions of homeowners, and they're not even homeowners yet, the millions of potential buyers that are going to be without a home at all. And the way that China operates is there's not a mortgage system in place in China like there is in the United States. These people either have to put 50% down, 80% down, or sometimes, a lot of times, it's a full cash payment on the deposit and on the property itself in order for them to have a home. And there's a lot more intricacies that come into play, especially if their homeowners outside of city address limits. But you have to keep in mind that China doesn't operate like the United States, and these people are never going to get their money back, and they're never going to have a home. So you got to think about the millions of people that are now potentially broke without a place to live, and none of that's even being talked about. That's a side note, but something to think about with the economy of China itself and how that could even interlace and interplay with us here in the United States as well. But the real estate that's not going to get finished because these guys aren't going to make their payments unless there's a bailout. And what does that bailout mean? Because again, that economy operates a lot differently than it does in the United States. What does that mean? And do you go and pay those people back, or are you trying to get Evergrande back into business and try and write down some of their note? I don't know. That part is to be seen. We'll kind of sit back with our seatbelts on and hold on for that, but that's something to consider going forward. Bottom line is that absent at a wholesale restructuring with local creditors, which will certainly involve impairments and potentially pressure from Beijing, Evergrande simply does not have the capacity to make payment-by-payment arrangements with its countless creditors, and thus last night's announcement has just delayed the inevitable. As for foreign bondholders, i.e. U.S. and other places, expect to be crammed down to the very bottom of the stock, perhaps even below the equity. After all, Z has to make someone pay. Incidentally, as we noted last night, quote, Beijing may have just found a brilliant solution to the Evergrande problem, effectively rescuing the company and averting a systematic crisis all at the same time. It will pay local bondholders and soft nationalize bailout Evergrande, which I was just talking about, but will avoid allegations of backsliding on tightening and deleveraging promises and improving common prosperity by stuffing foreign creditors. The common prosperity has to do with the socialist environment over there. That's what I was talking about before. We leave the last word to James Sullivan, head of Asia Pacific Equity Research at JP Morgan. Evergrande is still likely to default. This is not a company-specific issue. This is a structural issue that will impact the entirety of the Chinese developer space, but this will not become systemic, unquote. We agree with the former, but very much disagree with his cheerful assessment on the latter, and I'm right there with him. There is no way this does not become systemic Okay, so let's keep close eye on this and keep in mind two things. One, the next payment that was due still has not been technically paid and they are technically in default. And two, they've got another payment due on the 30th. Are they going to be able to make that payment, or what negotiation tactics are going to happen at that point? And is it going to be discounted as well? Again, you got to understand there's a lot of debt on this company and they're laden with it. People are going to want their money back. There's exposure everywhere, and they're going to start asking for that to be paid on some level. They're not going to just be written off and let everything else just slide and run by. So how is this going to play out? The next 30 to 60 days are going to be really, really, really important. Let's keep an eye on it. In the meantime, keep doing your thing. Get out there, work hard, keep your head up, and of all things, make sure, keep building.